Next on Sisterhood of the Second Act.
Roanoke College's Institute for Policy and Opinion Research has released its results for the Virginia Trust Index for the first time. Dr. Alice Kassens joins us to explain the results of the statewide survey and tell us how the numbers may impact you. Julee Goodman and Natalie Wynegar are here to tell us about the sensory garden at Brandon Oaks Nursing and Rehabilitation Care Center. Find out how the garden helps people suffering from memory loss. That coming up a little bit later in the show. We'll meet these women on this edition of Sisterhood of the Second Act right after this.
In Bedford County, Virginia, discover local wineries, breweries, cideries, and even a meadery. Each venue has its own unique vibe. Enjoy fun and games, or relax on a spacious deck with mountain views. Download the Bottled in Bedford Craft Beverage Trail map and sample happiness in every pour.
Get your map at bottledinbedford.com.
I'm gonna be an oak tree.
I think I'll be a dogwood tree.
My kids said they'd be looking for a thorny tree from me.
With Evergreen, you can be a tree. Our biodegradable urn combines your ashes, natural soil additives, and a native tree of your choice. Be a tree and grow for tomorrow.
I want to be a tree.
Learn more at evergreenmemorialtrust.com.
Now from the Fox Radio Roanoke studios, this is Sisterhood of the Second Act. Welcome to Sisterhood of the Second Act. I'm Denise Allen Membrano. The Virginia Trust Index rebounded slightly in August 2023 from its lowest point since Roanoke College started gathering the data in 2017. The modest increase ended a multi-year decline in trust. Dr. Alice Kassens, senior analyst at Roanoke College's Institute for Policy and Opinion Research, is here to tell us what the numbers mean. And Dr. Kassens, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me
today. I appreciate it. Well, for those people who aren't familiar with Roanoke College's research institute, the Policies Research Institute, what is it?
So we are a center that collects data almost every month. It's been at Roanoke College working for decades, long before I came to the college, and I'm on my second decade there. They started primarily doing political polling, hence the name, how they got started. But since then, they've added surveys that have to do with consumer sentiment, trust, and then other metrics regarding politics, such as political anxiety.
Now, the Virginia Trust Index measures social trust. Why is social trust important?
So as an economist, social trust is important for us. If people are trusting of each other, they're more likely and more quickly to enter into negotiations and sign contracts. And so it's an important predictor for productivity in an economy, particularly when you're dealing with negotiations with strangers. Trust is very important. And productivity is the primary determinant of long-run economic growth. So if we're more trusting, we're more productive, and we have a better growing economy.
So how do you gather this data for this index?
So we have 3 questions, that's it, that go on a survey. We do it every quarter, and so we call people on phone and cell phones. We also have some online modules that we use. So we collect data, getting sample sizes anywhere from 650 to 700 completed surveys, only calling and contacting people in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
That's all across the state, not just in like the Roanoke region.
Correct, and we have a smart dialer, as we call it, and it weights the phone numbers by their area code, so we're getting roughly a third from Northern Virginia, since that's where a third of our population is, and down to the smaller areas.
Okay, and what questions do you ask? You said 3 questions. What questions do you ask?
So we have 3 questions that we got from, there's a national survey that's been going on since the early 1970s. And so it's always good practice, if they're good questions have been used, to use theirs, borrow theirs, so that we know that they're good questions, but also we can compare directly to the nation as a whole. So we did that, and there's 3 questions asking individuals about whether or not they think people are more likely to take advantage of them or not, be fair or not, and worthy of their trust.
Now, we are talking with Dr. Alice Kassens. She's with Roanoke College, and we're talking about the research they've done to determine Virginia's Trust Index. So we know what it is now. So what were the results And
So we didn't report this for years. We've been collecting this information since February of 2017, but there wasn't much to tell a story about because the trust index, putting all three of those questions together into one metric, moved up and down by a little bit, but really stayed around very tight around an average level. But then in May of 2020, we all know what was happening in May of 2020, it jumped by 20 points, much more than it had ever moved before. So we had a big surge in trust, which is normal during crises, is to have people rally together and to be more trusting than maybe they had typically been. What's also normal is for the trust to return to whatever trend it had been at. So just a momentary increase in trust. Typically, we believe that trust is established early in one's life, and you can have momentary deviations from that trust level, but you tend back to where your trust level had been kind of ingrained on you in your early childhood. But what we saw in Virginia is, yes, it continued back towards its average level, but then it kept going. It kept dropping all the way through till May of 2023 this year, and we saw a modest increase. So suddenly there was a story to tell. And so that's why we decided to share it with everyone. We'll have to wait to see what happens in the coming quarters, like to see if we are moving in an upward trend. You know, one point doesn't make a trend.
Mm-hmm. So how do these numbers compare to national numbers?
So we break out the questions themselves and look at the questions because the nation as a whole doesn't necessarily make the index like we do. But if we look at the three questions, the same three questions that we ask, trust has been declining in the United States for the most part since the 1980s. It increased when they started collecting data in the 70s, increased a little bit, but since then it's been roughly declining over time. Now, as I said, that trust is oftentimes established when we're very young, so some of that could be generational. Younger people tend to be less trusting of others than the previous generation, so as we have more and more people less trusting, the average is going to decline.
Why do you do this research? And who uses the numbers that you gather?
So we have about 3 of us that work at the IPOR as far as running the analytics. We've got a battery of people that do great work collecting the data, doing the phone calling, managing the phone calling. But the 3 of us that write the reports are curious about all kinds of things related to politics. So Dr. Brian Parsons does a lot of work with politics because he's a political scientist, and I'm an economist. And so I'm always interested in coming up with questions that we can analyze what's going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Now we are talking with Dr. Alice Kassens. She's with Roanoke College. We're talking about the Virginia Trust Index, and I was so surprised when I saw those numbers, like seeing 45 point something percent. It seems so low. We were talking before the interview. Why is that number so low? And is that just normal? I mean, is that what you expected when you see? No.
Yeah, I would say so, because at the national level, it's much lower. If we look at that question on trust. And nationally, people are less trusting than they are here in the Commonwealth. So, in Virginia, we tend to have more positive values on a variety of metrics. Unemployment tends to be lower, which is good direction. Than the national level, consumer sentiment tends to be a little higher than the national level. And here, trust, a little bit higher than it is at the national level. Some of that may have to do with how our economy does. We tend to have a robust economy, largely because we are near Washington, D.C., a lot of jobs, and also the Tidewater area has a lot of defense contracts, so they have strong labor markets. So even if we have some areas of Virginia that struggle with the economy, that area where most of our population resides, over half of our population is there, we tend to have a very strong economy. So I think that's why we may have more trust than others, but it is declining like the nation as a whole, because I think just as generations move on, we're becoming a less trusting group of folks.
Do you know why?
We don't ask probing questions about why, just to keep our survey, because this is just 3 of many other questions that are on there. But if I had to guess, generations are different from one another. If I think about my parents when they grew up, it was very normal to leave your door unlocked and be trusting for a variety of reasons, including lower crime rates and things like that. But now I live in a rural area and I feel safe leaving my door open. I doubt there's many people that feel safe leaving their door open for a variety of reasons. So increased crime, and maybe social media can come into play on it, not trusting, if someone's posted something ugly or nasty about someone. So I think it's just a generational thing.
Now, we are going to have a link to the survey and its results on our webpage. But we talked before that you said income also plays a role in this. So what have you noticed along income lines as far as trust goes?
Yeah, if we put all of the surveys together, we had a nice big sample size. And then if we look across a variety of characteristics, income being one of them, to see who is more trusting, if we look at low income versus higher income. And it's a nice, neat step function, if you will, that those with lower household incomes trust less or are less trusting of others than people at higher income levels. And it's pretty much a smooth function. As your income rises, your trust increases.
And you have a theory behind that?
I do. I think that if a variety of things, including if you are lower income, you have a lot at risk. And so you're very cautious with placing your trust in anyone. You could also be looking at the other end of the income spectrum. Maybe you have higher income because you have a very strong network and you're trusting within those networks. So you have a different outlook on society.
Now, you do this trust index 4 times a year, correct? So this one was August. When's the next one?
November 2023.
So every quarter. Mm-hmm. And if people want to see whether that increase continues, should they just go to the IPOR website? Or?
Yeah, so what we're going to do with this report, since trust doesn't move as much as some of our other indicators, we're going to release this report every September. So in September 24, our next report will come out. We'll still collect the data every quarter. And then every year we will update our webpage. So right now, if you go to our webpage, you see every single quarter's value for the trust index. We've put all the quarters up there for anyone to see, anyone to use, the aggregated numbers, and this report. And if you come back a year from now, we'll have the 2024 report, and we'll add the 4 quarters that have happened since.
And any idea why? I believe I read that you thought that the numbers decreased so much during the pandemic because of, the elongated things going on in relation to the pandemic. But any reason why it would go up slightly?
Well, so if you use the theory of we tend to return to where we used to be, that alone would suggest, since we're way below our average that we had prior to the pandemic and that big jump, we should move up some to get towards that trend of how trusting we typically are, because that's what happens when we observe trust, both in the United States, but also internationally, those trends continue. So that alone should do it. And then as we move farther and farther away from the pandemic, that pandemic effect, if you will, should dissipate.
We'll see how the election impacts those trust numbers. Dr. Kassen, thank you so much
for
being
having
with
me.
us. And we will have Dr. Kassen's contact information in today's show notes, as well as the results of that survey by going to sisterhoodofthesecond.com. And when we return, a walk down memory lane isn't easy for some. A new sensory garden is helping some reconnect with memories and family members.
In Bedford County, Virginia, discover local wineries, breweries, cideries, and even a meadery. Each venue has its own unique vibe. Enjoy fun and games, or relax on a spacious deck with mountain views. Download the Bottled in Bedford Craft Beverage Trail map and sample happiness in every pour.
Get your map at bottledinbedford.com.
I'm going to be an oak tree.
I think I'll be a dogwood tree.
My kids say they be looking for a thorny tree from me.
With Evergreen, you can be a tree. Our biodegradable urn combines your ashes, natural soil additives, and a native tree of your choice. Be a tree and grow for tomorrow.
I want to be a tree.
Learn more at evergreenmemorialtrust.com.
Once again from the Fox Radio Roanoke Studios, Sisterhood of the Second Act.
Welcome back to Sisterhood of the Second Act. I'm Denise Allen Membrano. Brandon Oaks opened its expanded memory care unit in 2022, and while they were renovating it, they decided to do something unique. Since memory care facilities have to have a green space, they decided to create a sensory garden. And here to tell us more about it is Brandon Oaks Nursing and Rehabilitation Administrator Natalie Wynegar and Julee Goodman, Director of Development for Virginia Lutheran Homes. Ladies, thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So, question, what is a sensory garden?
Sensory gardens can be a number of things. The top idea, I think, especially for a memory support care unit, is a secured, contained area that engages the folks who get to have the pleasure of visiting with all 5 senses. So it engages you with sight, sound, taste, smell. As you said, you have to have an outdoor space, but we wanted to make sure that it was very engaging and also had programming with it.
Now, there aren't very many of these around, so where did the idea for you all to make one come from?
Well, as we age, senses actually decline and deteriorate. And so it's vital to improve the experiences that our residents actually have and to be able to make those engagements meaningful. So we really wanted to put together a space that was meaningful for our residents, not just an outdoor space, but something that allowed programming and engagement from our caregivers as well as family members.
And also during COVID, we realized we needed to keep our residents engaged and have them not feel isolated. And so we realized that outdoor spaces are vital and critical. And so we were committed to making sure that during the pandemic, we made plans to make greater and better outdoor spaces. And then also, we were fortunate enough to have a donor who is extremely passionate about memory care and wanted to give us a gift to enhance our memory support center. And so just a collaborative, we came to the point of the sensory garden was the number one thing we wanted to commit to.
And we're not just talking plants. So what's inside the sensory garden?
There's so much. You have vibrant colors that are inspiring for residents to engage with. We have a sensory path for residents to experience tactile senses as they go over the path, and they can experience things like gardening and sound. There's wind chimes, there's murals, there's so many things that our residents can actually experience that elevate the space that you wouldn't typically have in another area.
And we hired an actual person who has done many sensory gardens, a landscape architect who helped us realize that the foundation are the plants, but then we can add other objects and other elements to enhance those experiences. And so we kind of looked at our residents and what their activity levels, what they were capable of doing, maybe their personality types. And so we kind of made sure that our garden kind of spoke to our individual residents and what we had experienced.
Now we are talking with Julee Goodman and Natalie Wynegar from Brandon Oaks Nursing and Rehabilitation Care Center about their sensory garden. So when patients go into the garden, how does it help people with memory issues?
So as I said earlier, our senses are deteriorating as we get older. So it's important to have those impactful experiences. The smell of food, the touch of lotion on your skin, you lose those experiences as your senses deteriorate. So to have those moments that we can really engage and have those impactful moments for those that don't have those senses or have little senses associated with it, it can be really difficult. So we're really trying to find opportunities to engage and promote those senses for them.
And obviously, when you are in a memory support center, you're inside. We want to get people out into nature, fresh air. Anytime that you're outside, you're promoting movement, which, as we know, will help the mind. But everything in that garden has some type of cognitive benefit. Every activity, every plant. So it's limitless on the number of things that we can do and what we can stimulate. If someone has a specific cognitive deficit, we can take them to a specific activity that might engage and get their olfactory senses to be better, their fine motor skills. It may be their balance is off, so we want to make sure they're learning how to walk on uneven surfaces. It's limitless, really.
So how do families use it? We mentioned in the introduction that it can help families connect. How do families use it when they're visiting their loved ones?
So as someone ages as well, we lose communicative skills and we lose the opportunity to communicate and relate, especially for someone who has dementia or Alzheimer's. It can be pretty intimidating for a family member to try to interact in a new way with someone that they love and someone that they may have had a different relationship with in the past. And so we're hoping to provide guided experiences to be able to help them relate and have those engaged moments.
Yes, and we have activity boxes that are readily available for staff to use with our residents and then also those visitors. So if there's a grandchild that goes in to visit a grandmother, they can grab one of the activity boxes. They can sit down, all the supplies they need are in there, and also a guide, that roadmap, and it prompts conversations and it tells them what the cognitive benefits are. So, I think that more people will want to come visit their relatives because it's this whole, you're not walking into a museum, but you kind of feel like you are a hands-on activity museum almost. So there's just that new way of communicating and getting to know your loved one in a different way.
Now, radio listeners can go to our website and see this video because you have some items on the table here, and you mentioned to me before we started the interview that some of these items are in the activity box.
Yes.
So, one of them is the very fragrant lavender that we've all been smelling
Yes,
since you sat down.
It is. So obviously we have lavender plants in our garden. And of course, if you just run your hands across that, smell it, it's so engaging and wonderful. It has that soothing, so it can soothe moods. And if there's agitation, lavender is wonderful. And so what we do in our activity box is we have items that maybe would be in their rooms or in their apartments that they can relate to. This lotion smells like lavender, and so what we do is we take the found items or the food items, cleaning items, whatever, and we let them match them to the plants. So if it's lemon balm or mint, then we can find the plant, and we'll have the plant and the two items together, and they can figure out what matches what. So it's really just, again, engaging and realizing that we can also take the garden inside. As far as food is concerned, this could stimulate appetite because it's rosemary. How many people love rosemary? And so we can go out into the garden and stimulate someone's appetite right before lunch, and then they go in and they want to eat a bunch of really good food. So hopefully we have rosemary bread. And that's the other thing. Our chefs are wanting to incorporate things that are in the garden into the dietary.
I can smell everything right now. Too bad we don't have smell of radio or smell-o-vision. We are talking with Julee Goodman and Natalie Wynegar from Brandon Oaks Rehabilitation, Memory and Rehabilitation Care Center, or Nursing and Rehabilitation Care Center, and about the sensory garden. So why does it help? I know you've kind of alluded to this throughout the interview with the rosemary and the lavender about helping ease agitation. A lot of people who do suffer from memory loss experience agitation, but how does the garden help that?
So just like if we were to go to a spa, we're hoping to promote a relaxing and calming environment. The smells, the sights, the sounds, something that will promote an ease and relaxed space to be able to promote a more engaging experience. It can be very stimulating, and if you're around a lot of people, a lot of commotion, and to have a space to really, where our residents and families can go and take a step back from the chaos, it will be a great opportunity for them.
Absolutely. So many of our senses determine our mood and determine how we're directed, our day is directed. And so if someone is agitated or they need a mood switch or change, just to be redirected into a new space. And of course, breathing that good oxygen, being outside, understanding that the day can change, your mood can change, and we do have a calming, relaxing environment for them.
Is there a set number of people that can be in the garden at the same time?
It's a fairly large space. Right now, all of our residents and visitors could actually spend time, and we have a lot of programming and activities that are scheduled in the environment right now. So we provide opportunities for our residents on a day-to-day basis, but we also have time where residents and families can go one-on-one on their own.
Now, has there been, you've had this for several months now, has there been a good reaction to it, or what has the reaction been?
Yeah, we've had an overwhelmingly positive reaction from both residents and family members. We've always had a space, an outdoor space, an interior courtyard, but to have intentional programming and a space where we can provide for our residents and families to have guided experiences and engagement has been astounding.
I would imagine, as far as family engagement is concerned, that's really beneficial in promoting that connection that you often lose when someone might not remember your name or things like that.
Absolutely. And the caregivers and the staff are just so excited about it, not just the residents and family members, but now that they have this new space, they have such a personal relationship with each one of our residents, and they know their personalities, so they can actually think about what parts of the garden would be perfect for that particular resident, and so they can guide them into that. So I think the staff, they're just as excited as the residents, for sure. They get to get out and play with everybody.
Yeah, get out in the fresh air and enjoy the activity boxes and things that we weren't able to do before.
So caregiving is hard, and I think we're talking about mood changes and agitation and things with residents, but what a great mood swing it can be and change for the staff members as well. So it's good for everyone.
Yeah. And is this something you can use year-round?
Absolutely. Right now the weather's getting cooler and we're able to utilize that space a lot more than we were in the heat of the summer. But I think the sensory garden we can use all year round, even in the colder months.
Absolutely.
As well.
And it's good for people to go outside and experience seasonal changes. You can tell them it's fall or winter, but to go out and feel fall and winter, that's a whole new experience. And also time of day that can help them with what time of day it is. Instead of looking at a clock, they're outside.
Yes, getting to sleep. Ladies, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And we will have Brandon Oak's contact information in today's show notes at sisterhoodofthesecond.com. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after this.
See where a grateful nation remembers its heroes, and where Thomas Jefferson came to relax. Where small town charm is just down the road from big outdoor adventures. Find peace and quiet, as well as the sounds of family fun. Destination Bedford is located where the Piedmont Plateau meets the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Where ordinary ends, Bedford begins.
I'm going to be an oak tree.
I think I'll be a dogwood tree.
My kids say they be looking for a thorny tree from me.
With Evergreen, you can be a tree. Our biodegradable urn combines your ashes, natural soil additives, and a native tree of your choice. Be a tree and grow for tomorrow.
I want to be a tree.
Learn more at evergreenmemorialtrust.com.
I would like to thank Dr. Kassens, Julee Goodman, and Natalie Wynegar for joining us today. Dr. Kassens showed us how social trust impacts our behavior, how we do business, and even our overall well-being. Natalie and Julie introduced us to sensory gardens and how they help people suffering from memory loss. I'm Denise Allen Membrano. We'll see you next week for another edition of Sisterhood of the Second Act.